Hey there, Sesh 232 folks. Hopefully you're doing well. In this tutorial, go through and I'm going to open up the GSS data for 2012 to practice homework problem 0. We're going to roll through and look into how to clean data, how to perform univariate frequency tables, so for one variable. And then for two variables, we're going to go ahead and we're going to work on utilizing the contingency table or crosstabs and work on that to perform sort of a bivariate analysis. All right, let us begin. So the first thing we want to do is we want to look at the actual homework problem we're working on. So just to make sure that everybody is in the clear, it makes sense. Once that is opened, note that what I'm asking for you all for sort of problem 0 practice demonstration, we're going to look at how to utilize the variable of strength of religious affiliation, the relatin variable, as well as respondent self-identified sex value. So the sex value coded in GSS is coded as the sense of a binary situation. And if I go to relatin, as you've seen in the lecture videos, that there are don't know and not applicable in our responses that we want to kind of clean up because we'll consider this to essentially be data of non-response. And so we want to focus on the four main variables so we can provide that subset that is more informative of what's really going on. And so we need to be able to clean our data, then use the descriptive statistics to find the frequency table for the religious affiliation, and then go ahead and we're going to perform a constructed contingency table for relatin as well as the variable sex, relatin in rows and sex in the columns, and have two different tables, one with a total percentage and one with a column percentage. All right. So when you open your data, it should look something like this. If not, maybe the variables tab needs to be over here. And actually the variables tab is what we're needing to go to next. So make sure you click on the variables tab. And in the search variables, we'll go ahead and we'll look at relatin. Looks like it's all the way down here. I could finish typing that in if I needed to. Once I find it, it's fine. Just make sure that's the variable that's being checked. So if it isn't, and you need to go down here, check that variable. And then we're going to go ahead, and once we get to there, we're going to go and click Edit. Once we click Edit, it's going to pull up immediately the data variable relatin. It doesn't have the description. It'd be nice if it did. If you need to know what it is, you can always go to the GSS database that we've been using. And we can see the levels, which are basically their categories. We have no religion, not very strong, somewhat strong, strong. We also have the DK and NA, and we don't want to necessarily include that in our variable analysis. So I want to go ahead and I'm going to click on missing values. Now, once I click on missing values, it is blank into that box. So remember, I'm clicking on the box next to the missing values. Now, even though this is blank, we're now going to edit it and sort of clean the data by adding what we consider to be missing values. Once I click it once, this new win source is equal to blank. And I can just go ahead and I can put DK. Those are the value. That's the value. When our source or when our output, when someone's response is DK, we consider it to be missing. I'll also do it again. And I'll put in NA. And once I get that done, I can click to the side and then click the down button. And what's really nice about this is that once I run through this sort of result, I'm going to move this, just move things over. I can go ahead and I can look at the relative value. And anytime you see these sort of NAs provided. That was considering when it was a missing value. So there weren't a lot. Most of them were actually filled in one of the four possible values we'll look at. That's not a lot, but it has already been cleaned up. All right, cleaning is done. We managed to get all the values that we needed to. Because if not, it would have look, we eventually get a table that looks like this that has the DK and NA. We don't want that. So this helps clean the data. So that's part one. Part two is that we're going to go ahead and we're going to provide a univariate frequency table. We can go to analyses, and that gives us a possible statistical analyses we can run with. And we can actually do it pretty easily. It's very similar to what we had to do when we did our one variable descriptive statistics. We can go ahead and go to exploration, then to the descriptives. And just like before, we're going to go ahead and we're going to search for that variable, relative. Now, I didn't want to go to the search bar and wait. I could always scroll down. But once it's there, click the variable. And this looks like it's trying to treat it like our numerical values, and it's not numerical. How do I know it's not numerical? Well, I'll remove the search thing right here. Certain numerical values actually have a symbol associated with it. We probably talked about it before. If it's numerical, it'll have this sort of ruler. If it's categorical, you'll see the circles and the A, so categories. And we know this is a categorical variable, which means like the mean, median, standard deviation, minimum, maximum, they don't really make sense here. So that's fine, even though these descriptives are not very descriptive at the moment. If you go ahead and click frequency table, it actually pulls down our categories and finds and tallies each of them up. You see how many are no religion, not very strong, somewhat strong, and strong association toward a religious background. And the percent of the totals. So we can actually see the breakdowns, the chunks that comprise the whole. Now we're almost done. I need to get rid of some of these values. This is just blank and doesn't actually look visually appealing. So to do so, I'll go ahead and I'll uncheck them in both our central tendency as well as unchecking all of our dispersion values. And now I'm left with just the sample size, the number of individuals in the survey that we have as a response, as well as the number that's missing. And that will include our don't know, not available. And there aren't a lot, which is good. Because, as we mentioned in the lecture, if we miss a lot, if it was like in is 100 and missing is 5,000, you're basically missing most people. So this may not be as representative in terms of validity toward what is actually supposed to be representing the population. But with 19 out of over 1,900, that's not a huge amount of individuals that aren't included. So while the numbers may have changed a little bit in terms of our percentages, if we included the don't know or not applicable, it's not changing it a lot here, and it still shows it's fairly representative of the population. All right, that's all you really need to do, and I can go ahead and I can do either the double click for Macs or a right click for a PC, and I can copy these tables accordingly. All right. There's your univariate. But now, let's say we wanted to go from univariate statistics to bivariate. Basically, a bivariate, two variables, and we want to create a contingency table, some crosstabs, to analyze how does religion get impacted, or how does it intertwine with a variable like identified sex. And we can do so by going first to the analysis tab, if we hadn't had that up already. And we can go to frequencies. Actually, side note, one of the things that is really nice about this data is that if I had not edited these things, let's say I cross these out. If I went through the analysis and didn't know that there were don't know, not applicable here. Well, this is not that great. This isn't correct. Oh crud, I forgot. These edits actually will edit in real time. So if you had not done this step, no worries. Once you do it, it'll fix these tables immediately. And you don't have to worry about it. Which means even if you, and then you can go ahead and copy the finished product as opposed to having to run the analysis all over again. All right, back to two variables. I were to go ahead and I can go to frequencies and independent samples, because these are dealing with our contingency tables. This would be the beginning to providing a sort of bivariate crosstabs set of values. Now, as I mentioned, I want Relatin to actually be in the rows corresponding position. So once I search for it, find it, I can go to rows and move it in here. And note, the crosstabs, the contingency table, will provide the values here, but leaves everything blank. That's because we need a second variable to see how the breakdowns shift from one group to another. So with that done, I'm going to go ahead and click the sex variable, find it here. I'm going to go to create it as our column. And once I do that, it'll perform the sort of breakdown, seeing how many individuals from each group fit in each sort of crosshairs. Have those joint events, these cells, which are kind of like each sort of values that fit here, as well as our overall totals. So it looks like there were 1,955 people. It's exactly what we got up above here, right? Yeah. So we're good to go. It looks like it fit, and there weren't other missing values in the sex variable that loses more individuals, loses more information. Now, this is a great start. From there, we can go ahead and we can click on the cells tab. Clicking on the cells tab gives us possible options. And the first one, as you mentioned in our homework, is I want a table with total percentages as well as one with the column percentages included. The total provides us these sort of joint percentages. You know, the joint 100%, that's everybody. And then we can see something like individuals who identified as female, who also identify to have a strong religious affiliation, comprise about 22.6% of all the individuals in this survey. So having these two total gives us our total values. So if I wanted to include that into our variable, we can go ahead and click on the contingency table, perform the copy, and we can paste that into the variable we have here. Now, when I want to do one with the column percentages, it actually, well, it doesn't create a new table. So I'd have to go ahead and change these values a little bit, remove the total. And now we're going to go to column, and this gives us our conditional probabilities that given someone is female, or given someone as male, what is the breakdown for religion or no religion, not very strong, somewhat strong, strong? And that gives us an understanding of if someone identified as male, then no religion percentages would be 24.7, 36.8, 7.4, 31.1. And note that these values at the bottom, that's everybody they consider themselves female, everyone who identified as male, and this gives us those percentages that we could get for a column version of the contingency table. All right. Once you get those values for the conditional percentages, you're done. That's all we need to do. Hopefully, this felt like it was a short, not too awful situation. Um, and that, but that's our beginnings, and really a lot of the work that we needed to do to perform our frequency and contingency table construction on Jamovi. All right, take care, folks.